How's it going, guys? My name is Tavarish, and this is a Sunday show where I tell you something that's on my mind. Well, one major topic that's on my mind, and I answer a few of your questions. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. This should be fun. So before we start off, I want to make sure that you guys know that all the proceeds from my shirts, my Wrench Everyday shirts, which I will be putting back on the Teespring, my Teespring store, this shirt and another shirt and perhaps other designs, all those proceeds are going to hurricane relief victims for this month, September, which is ending in about a week, and also October because Maria hit a lot of Caribbean islands hard. It hit Puerto Rico hard. They have basically no power. I have friends and family telling me that they know people over there and they're really having a tough time. So let's make sure that we help them out. Link will be in the description below. So today's topic is something I've been wanting to talk about on video for quite some time, and I never really got the chance to do it, mainly because I didn't know how to approach it. So I think this sort of one-on-one interaction with you guys is the right venue for it. Now, it is about car financing. And I know that a lot of people finance their cars, and I know that a lot of people lease their cars instead of buying them outright. Now, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I'm not a financial advisor. You probably shouldn't be taking financial advice from me anyway, because I have 7 cars. Most of them don't work at any one given time. But I don't have any debt, so you can take that however you see fit. But here's my thoughts on why I would personally never finance a car. So the number one reason for me, at least, is the fact that I'm basically very risk averse. I don't like taking risks with my money, and I don't like owing people money. So my house, I do have a loan on it, and that is considered good debt since it's technically an appreciating asset. But it still irks me a lot, and I'm trying to pay it down as fast as humanly possible. But a car is a little bit different because it's not an appreciating asset. Well, most cars aren't. It's a depreciating asset. So let's say you're like the average consumer in the US and you want to buy a car. The average price of a car is actually quite high. It's like $34,000. And the average loan interest rate is around 4 to 6%. So it's actually higher than 4%, but let's say you get a good deal or you have good credit or something like that. But let's say you take out a loan for around 60 months, which is the average for people in this country, in the US. You're going to be paying basically a few grand over that, and at the end of those 60 months, the car is really not going to be worth 30 grand. It's going to be worth more like 12 to 15. So it's going to lose a lot of value, plus you're overpaying for that value of the car just for the privilege of a lower monthly payment, or just for the privilege of you having that car for that amount of time. Having a new car. Buying new cars is a totally different thing. I wouldn't do that anyway because I'm more of a used car guy. I'm more about having value per dollar. But that's one reason I would never finance a car, just because it adds on top of that initial steep depreciation a interest rate which you have to pay, and also you don't own the car. The bank owns the car. You have to get a title when you pay everything off. They have it sent to you, and that's a whole different thing. But to me, it just makes no sense, because I could spend the same amount of money on something really interesting, or you can spend a lot less and buy a cheaper car just outright. Take a look at my wife's Hyundai Elantra. That car is 5 years old, and this would be basically coming off a financing agreement from it being brand new. It was a one-owner car, and it drives perfectly fine. It has good crash test ratings. It's really good on gas, and it's a really decent, reliable car. And I bought it for $5,000, which is what people pay for a down payment, and they'll have a car payment on top of that, which typically is $500 a month. I'm not prepared to pay that amount of money for just to own a car. It doesn't make any sense to me. But that's just on new cars. On used cars, the rates tend to be higher. Well, you could go the route of going through a credit union and then just taking out a personal loan for the amount, and then having a lower rate there. But again, you're taking a risk on something that's depreciating. It's never gonna appreciate. And even if it does, even if it hits the bottom of its curve, then it's not gonna go up more. Not every car is a Toyota Supra, not every car is an Acura NSX, and not every car is a Lamborghini LP640. but most cars are just going to go straight into the trash can as far as value. And in the trash can is where I like to dig, because that's where you get some golden nuggets. Now, if your name rhymes with Schmug Schmemuro, you might say that, well, it's stupid not to finance a car because let's say you get a really good interest rate, like 2% or less, which is less than the inflation, less than basically inflation. So you're getting free money at that point. You can put that money that you would have paid cash for that car into a some sort of IRA, or you can put it into the stock market, or you can put it into some investment that gives you a return that is over the interest rate. Yeah, you could do that. Here's the thing. When you talk about financing, you're talking about generalities. Well, at least I do. I talk about generalities in that most people aren't going to be able to afford a $30,000 car in cash. What they can afford is a down payment and maybe some monthly payments. Based on this, and that people typically live paycheck to paycheck, and they have car payments as just a part of their household budget, and let's say if they lose a job, then that household budget pretty much implodes on itself. That's what I'm working with. Now, the people who have 30 grand to spend, and you say, oh, I want to buy a new car, maybe it would make sense to finance, and if you're disciplined with your money, and you can put that money into some other account where it will make money more than the interest rate, that's fine. But for me, cars are impulse buys. They're more about taking a pound of flesh. Let's say I spent 36 grand on my Aston Martin. I see that 36 grand directly taken from my account, and it hurts. It hurts a little bit. I tend to think that you should spend between 5 and 15%, erring more on the conservative side of 5 to 10% of your net worth on a single car purchase. Now, I'm not talking about income. You don't have to make $400,000 to afford a $40,000 car, but let's say you have $400,000 in assets, and you can afford a $40,000 car, depending on income and whatnot. Just in case that $40,000 car, the value disappears overnight, then you won't be basically living out of a box. What a lot of people do, and what I think is a problem with the perspective of people like Doug DeMuro, who think that you can put that money elsewhere, is that people just don't have that money. And they live paycheck to paycheck, and they basically buy a car that, if stuff hits the fan, they can't afford. They'll have to sell it, they'll be underwater on it, and that's a bad situation for everybody. And in fact, 25% of all car loans in this country are subprime, meaning that it's people who are overspending their income amount. Like, it means that they don't have good credit, and they most likely shouldn't be getting the car that they're getting. They should get something a little more modest. They should get something that is a little more in their price range, but for some reason they decided to get something outside of that. So they also have a very high default rate, and it's also not very good for the economy. But it's actually great for me, because then I get cheaper cars. Car manufacturers pump out more and more cars because people are buying and buying them because they want something nice. They feel like they deserve it. So I get stuff that's heavily depreciated because car manufacturers made too many of them. And you get a really, really decent car for a good price, but that's only after you've done your research and they've depreciated to a level where you can afford them, and that they're not going to go down any further. Now, again, I am not knocking anybody who wants to finance a car. That is a personal decision for you and for your family, and I have no idea what your situation is like. Maybe it makes sense for you, and you want to lease a car, or you want to have any other situation where you purchase a car that is not necessarily buying it cash. That's fine with me. But those are the reasons why I personally wouldn't do it. And I'd rather spend my money on something that would give me an experience that I wouldn't miss at some point, something like a vacation. And again, I would never put that on credit either, because you're just going to be paying for it right after the novelty, the honeymoon period has worn off. So that's pretty much it. All right, now comes the question and answer portion of this video. And the first question is from KJ Killa Motorsports on Twitter. And he asks, or I'm not sure if it's a he or she, but if I ask nicely, can I drive the Aston? Yes. Our next question comes to us from Millennium56 on Twitter. And they say, what is your favorite song? Yes, it's not car-based. My favorite song, it's hard. It's like saying, what's your favorite car? Yeah, I don't know, but a really good one that never gets old for me is Ghost of Perdition by Opeth. And I'm not sure that it's for everyone. There are some death metal themes there, but it's a song that it encompasses that band's entire sort of ethos. It has a lot of different ideas. It's very, very interesting. And yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily catchy, and it's not for everybody, but yeah, I love it. Our next question comes to us from Alberto Lemus on Twitter. He's saying, is buying a 100,000-mile Dodge Magnum for $1,000 a good idea for a second car? I think the Dodge Magnum is underrated. I really dig the look of them, and I'm not sure what engine is going to be in a $1,000 Magnum, but it's likely going to be the V6, which I think it's 3.6 or 3.7 liter. You guys will have to correct me on that. But it seems like that would be a good enough deal. I don't know much about those cars. I think that's a Pentastar V6. But it should be a decent bargain, even for $1,000. I mean, any car for $1,000 at this point, and something that new should be fine. You can most likely get parts anywhere, and you can most likely fix it on the cheap. So as a second car, especially because it's a four-door and also a station wagon, and it looks kind of cool when it's lowered and has an exhaust and all that stuff, yeah, I think it would probably be a good second car. Our next question comes to us from S. Ganesh on Twitter. They say, what car should I buy under $6,000 that is good to learn stick shift on? Reliability first and then fun second. I'd say if you're talking about reliability, then Toyota Corolla or Honda Civic. I would go more towards Toyota because parts are stupid cheap, and Hondas, they do have cheap parts sometimes, just because they made so many of them, but Hondas sometimes have, especially on the K-Series engines, those things tend to get expensive for no reason. And stuff like a Toyota Camry or a Corolla, they all use a similar four-cylinder engine, and they all use sort of the same cheap quality, but I mean long-lasting parts. So I would say Toyota Corolla, maybe a Toyota Yaris, that would be really good. That would be reliability first and fun second. If you want to gear more towards fun, then I'd say maybe like an 02 to 03 Nissan Maxima. They made those in 6-speed, and that has a ton of torque, and the engine sounds good. And they're decently reliable. There are some things that are a little bit disconcerting, but it is a decently reliable car, and it looks not too bad. There's a decent amount of space inside the car. There's a decent amount of trunk space, and it does sound pretty good when you hit it pretty hard. So yeah, I think Nissan Maxima would be, you can get like probably the nicest one in the world for around $6,000. But if reliability is concerned, then Toyota Corolla it is. Our next question comes to us from Alex Rosenfeld on Twitter, and he says, do you miss your RX-7, M3, M5, Eclipse, etc.? So basically all the cars that I did the Art of the Flip series on Jalopnik, and all the cars I've sold in the past. And yes, I miss almost all of them. The RX-7 in particular, and also the VR4, the 99 VR4 that I had, which actually is for sale, I think. I saw it for sale in California, and they wanted $15,000 for it. And I'm this close to actually buying it back, but I don't want to spend that much money because I know what experience I had with the car, and it was a good experience, but I think for $15,000 I can find something else that will give me that experience and have some sort of novelty attached to it as well, because I know that car, I've worked on that car, and I'm sort of used to the car already, so I'm not sure if I want another two-door sports car because I have sort of enough of them already. So I want something that is more interesting or just deviates from that a little bit for my next car. Our next question comes to us from Alex Chavez on Facebook, and he says, what is your opinion on the E60 M5? Now, I love the E60 M5, but I love it a lot less than I used to. I used to be really, really obsessed with this car, and I love the fact that it was a 500 horsepower high revving V10. It was a very exotic engine, exotic sounding engine, and actually exotic built because, I mean, nothing short of a Lamborghini Gallardo would have something that revved so high. I mean, you can rev to like 8,500 with a slight tune. The only issue that I have with the E60 M5 is that it's a bit unreliable. So I wrote an article on Jalopnik a while back saying that BMW engines are something. Well, whatever, I can't remember what it is. But the E60 M5 suffers from rod bearing failures very prematurely. And it's not a matter of if, but when. So the rod bearings tend to go on those cars, and when they go, they can grenade the engine. They can spin a rod bearing, and that's not good for anything, especially if you're revving really high. I don't know why that is. I don't know why BMW can't really make an engine that doesn't chew through its rod bearings. All the M cars seem to have them, at least the older ones, like the E46 M3, the E92 M3, the E60 M5, and also the E39 M5. I had a brain fart there. Even that one had rod bearing issues, and on top of other issues like Vanos solenoid issues, like seals failing, and you have stuff like the CCV system not working. And then you have the problems with the SMG pump. The SMG3, I believe, transmission that was in the M5, that wasn't the most reliable thing. The SMG pump actually had to be overhauled after a certain amount of miles just because it was overtaxed, and I don't think it was designed properly. But if you're going to get an E60 M5, I would probably get one that has had the rod bearings done, and I would probably get one that has a manual transmission. So that is the later models. I believe the 08 and up had the manual transmission option. Yeah, I mean, that car is still a very good value. I mean, you can find basket cases for 10 grand, but they're gonna need another 10 grand worth of work. So 20K is your sweet spot for that, that model. I think for 25K, you can get a really well sorted and really well optioned M5, but you know, kind of buyer beware, because they do have some gremlins, you know, in that era. But if it's just a fun car, then yeah, go for it. Our next question comes to us from Larry Velez on Facebook. He says, have you noticed yourself become more confident in front of the camera as you put out more videos? Way less nervous words like egregious, outlandish, and fortuitous in these latest episodes. Keep up the good work. First of all, those aren't nervous words. Those are signs of a high intellect when I use those words. But I mean, I say those words. They're common vernacular for me. I use them because that's what's in my brain. So that's pretty much it. Have I become more confident in front of the camera? Maybe. I don't know. You guys can tell me that. I notice things about myself when I have to edit hours and hours of my own footage that I don't do anymore. And I notice things that I do more now that I've noticed those other things. So it's a little bit weird. I think I have become a little bit more confident, but that comes with time. I mean, usually when people see a camera like this, it's hard for them to envision what other people are seeing. So they get into their own heads about what am I doing and how do I present myself, and that makes them become a lot more skittish, and that makes them become a lot more nervous. So I have a little bit of experience in that, you know, I have been on camera before, and even though I'm not in any way a poster child for being on camera, it's not as hard for me as it is for some other people. Our next question comes to us from Clifford Eisenman. I think that's how you say his last name. He says, Tavarish, love the show. Thank you. What do you think about a 2000... Let's see. What do you think about a 2000 Mitsubishi Eclipse 3.0 GT? I have an opportunity to pick one up cheap for $300. Needs crank position sensor. Thinking of making it my project. My son turns 16 next year. Now, that has a few red flags for me. The needs crank position sensor is likely somebody on Craigslist wrote it because that was a cheap way for the car not to run, but it could be something else like needs timing belt and needs valves and needs head work. But for $300, honestly, you'd be hard pressed to find something. Even if you could get it running, you're not going to spend a lot of money here. So that 3.0, I believe it had a 6G72 or some variant thereof. Might have had a single overhead cam, so it didn't make a ton of power. But if it's for a project with your son, then go for it. I mean, $300 and getting your hands dirty, and especially bonding with a family member is, yeah, you can't put a price on that. So yeah, 100% go for it. Next question, actually last question from Facebook, from Jeff Tomasino, and he writes, Any power upgrades for the SL55 planned? Pulley slash tune slash exhaust. Actually, yeah. I have a pulley and tune sent to me by VRP, that's Victory Road Performance, and an exhaust. I probably will do an exhaust maybe myself, just by taking out the resonators and maybe putting on some headers if I can get those. But yeah, the pulley and tune video should be coming out in the next few weeks. I do want to perhaps do a dyno run if I can get some scheduled, but yeah, that should be pretty interesting because it's bolting on power. It's just a smaller pulley on the supercharger and a little thing that tunes your ECU from a laptop. So that's going to be pretty cool. But that's where the SL is going. On top of the manual swap, that is the most daunting thing in my in that project. So yeah, look forward to that. So that is it. If you like this video, consider subscribing. I have almost 100,000 subscribers, and I'd like to get that to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the month. That would be very, very good for me and for you and for everybody. The world will be a better place if I have more subscribers. But all jokes aside, I really appreciate you guys supporting me, and yeah, it's been a real fun ride, and I look forward to the future. But yeah, hit that subscribe button or the little bell next to the subscribe button. Notification button makes you part of my notification squad. So if you'd like to contact me for any reason, you want to ask me another question, and I really, really love answering these questions and seeing encouragement and seeing where people say I'm wrong. I know I'm going to get a lot of emails for that financing thing I did in the beginning of this video. Then yeah, you can contact me at The Real Tavarish. That is Instagram and Twitter. You can contact me at facebook.com/asktavarish, and asktavarish@gmail.com is my email. So I'm easy to find. You can also DM me on Wheelwell. So all those things will be in the link below. But until next time, this is me telling you that it has been a pleasure talking with you guys. So I'll see you guys next time.